Waltz would be the first high-profile departure from the Trump administration if this proves to be true.
Now, it's quite clear that, just like many things in the Trump administration, the foreign policy front is not going well. The war in Ukraine is still raging. The situation in Gaza is awful. There are tensions between the U.S. and China.
White House National Security Advisor Mike Waltz and his deputy, Alex Wong, were alleged to have been leaving the Trump White House as of this morning. However, as that story developed, we've learned that he's actually been tapped for a different role within the Trump administration. He will be serving as ambassador to the United Nations. And in the meantime, it appears that Secretary of State Marco Rubio will be the interim national security advisor until he's replaced. Maybe, we'll see, Jake?
Yeah. Sideways goes Mike Waltz. Sideways goes Mike Waltz. So he's not down and he's not out, but he's hurt, dog. Don't ask him if he's all right. Now, the really interesting thing about this story is why? Because a bunch of neocons were brought into the Pentagon and people against the war with Iran were taken out of the Pentagon. But Mike Waltz is a neocon and now he's taken out of the National Security Advisor role. What in the world is going on? Let's try to find out.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say it is very unclear, but we're gonna give you the facts and the details as we know them at this moment. Obviously, this is a story that could further develop, but this shakeup does obviously impact others as well. As I mentioned, Waltz will be the ambassador to the United Nations, and then Marco Rubio, who's the current Secretary of State, will be the Secretary of State. He will remain in that role, but will also serve as the interim national security advisor. So here's what Trump wrote on Truth Social in making this announcement today. I will be nominating Mike Waltz to be the next United States ambassador to the United Nations from his time in uniform on the battlefield, in Congress, and as my national security advisor. Mike Waltz has worked hard to put our nation's interests first. Has he? I know he will do the same in his new role. In the interim, Secretary of State Marco Rubio will serve as National Security Advisor while continuing his strong leadership at the State Department. Together, we will continue to fight tirelessly to make America and the world safe again. Okay, so reports indicate that Laura Loomer had a hand in this, allegedly. So apparently she was in Donald Trump's ear, essentially advising him against keeping Mike Waltz as part of his administration, arguing that he isn't loyal enough. She allegedly told Trump in this recent meeting at the Oval Office that he needs to get rid of Waltz and other aides who she believes are insufficiently loyal to the MAGA agenda, the Make America Great agenda, or the America First agenda. But the embattled national security advisor was also under siege from personalities such as Loomer, who had been complaining to administration officials that she'd been excluded from the vetting process for National Security Council aides. In her view, Waltz relied too much on neocons, referring to hawkish neoconservatives within the Republican Party, as well as others who Loomer argued were not MAGA enough types. Now, Loomer is a confusing figure because of the fact that she is honestly a staunch supporter of Israel. She's very much Israel first and wants a war with Iran. So the idea that she's against neocons doesn't really make much sense. But make no mistake about it, Waltz absolutely is a neocon. In fact, Dana Bash from CNN, who's very much a supporter of Israel, seemed a little bit alarmed by the news today. Let me give you a little taste of what I mean.
First of all, Mike Waltz is a very serious person.
She said that with a straight face. She said that with a straight face. Now, what was she referring to? Why is Mike Waltz such a serious person? Let's take a look.
First of all, Mike Waltz is a very serious person. He is a former Green Beret. He's a 4-time Bronze Star winner. That all happened, that service, military service, is obviously well before he ran for Congress. As part of his sort of approach to the world, it was much more hawkish historically than anybody around President Trump in the current form. And so my understanding, and I'm curious what you all are hearing, is that never mind Signalgate, it was that very fundamental mistrust of him and skepticism of him and his perspective about the world that was also problematic from the start.
It absolutely was, and I think Signalgate was the reason for his departure, but not really what led up to it. He is a hawk, there's no doubt about it.
There have also been some rumors indicating that in the future he will be replaced by Steve Witkoff, who of course is Donald Trump's special envoy to the Middle East. I should note that he is not loved by the Israeli government. In fact, Israel's been fighting pretty hard and lobbying behind the scenes to get rid of Steve Witkoff entirely because of the fact that he pressured Israel into agreeing to a temporary ceasefire with Hamas, which lasted about 2 months. I don't know if Witkoff is really going to be tapped for this role, but that would be fascinating.
Yeah, so this is as confusing as it gets. So normally what we do on the show is we tell you, oh, here's what's actually happening behind the scenes, and we'll lay out why. And then we have the rule that clarifies almost all legislation and what happens in government, which is follow the money. In this case, I have no idea what's going on. And I almost never say that, because how can you get rid of the anti-war guys in the Pentagon and then get rid of Mike Waltz next, who's definitely pro-war? How does that make any sense? I don't get it. And then Laura Loomer is Israel first, but she's talking about taking out neocons from inside the administration.
It makes no sense.
That doesn't make any sense at all. So, I mean, one possibility is Laura Loomer is just taking out America first guys, pretending that they're neocons, just because neocon sounds bad, so she's slapping that label on. But second of all, why is Laura Loomer making decisions about who works in the US government?
I think that's the biggest question, honestly, right? Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, what qualification does she have? Why does she have so much influence or sway over Trump? Or more importantly, Cenk, what if that's just a cover story, right? Like, we don't know for sure.
Yeah, so
and she did take credit, by the way, sorry to interrupt you, but she did take credit today in regard to what's happening to Mike Waltz. Loomer appeared to take credit in a post on social media, writing scalp. Hopefully the rest of the people who were set to be fired but were given promotions at the NSC under Waltz also depart, Loomer wrote in another post. Go ahead, Cenk.
So in that post, I tried to interact with her because I don't get it. I'm like, are you Israel first or are you against neocons? So I'd love some clarification, because her past is Israel first, but maybe she's changed her mind. I mean, that's a very, very doubtful, but that's why. And then somebody wrote like, oh, what are you bothering to talk to a loon like Laura Loomer for? That shows you're not a serious journalist. Are you guys kidding me? The cover story is that Laura Loomer is making the final decisions on who gets fired at the White House. So is that crazy? Absolutely, right? But is it true? It seems like it might be true. So then I've got to ask Laura Loomer, what's your actual agenda if you're, I don't know, the vice president or whatever you are, right?
Yeah, and want to know something insane? So if you guys can recall, some time ago, Laura Loomer met with Donald Trump in the Oval Office to persuade him to fire other individuals, right? That included Thomas Boudry, a senior director for legislative affairs. He was also Waltz's legislative director when Waltz was serving in the House of Representatives. David Feith, a senior director for technology and national security. So she's in the Oval Office trying to convince Trump to fire these people. Trump did fire these people. In the room was Mike Waltz. So Mike Waltz is basically sitting there listening to the woman who ultimately might have determined what his fate was within the Trump administration.
So part of the reason I say that is Loomer representing other voices, right? Because I know Trump's nuts, but really, like, one of the most unhinged right wingers, you're gonna bring in like some blogger or whatever she is, and go, okay, who would you like to fire in the National Security Council? And then make the National Security Advisor sit there in shame and humiliation as this rando blogger lists all of his aides that should be fired, and then the president listens to her. She's that powerful? Nah.
There's something going on.
There's something else behind that, right? So I mean, look, guys, I'll give you a funny example. Like, Biden would never listen to any left winger ever, right, online. Like, he might listen to a New York Times reporter or a MSNBC host or something, but this is the equivalent of, and I'm almost feeling bad for Jimmy to make this analogy, but if Biden called in Jimmy Dore and was like, who do you think I should fire in the National Security Council? we would all be like, what is going on?
I mean,
are you serious? Right? Like, that is so beyond the pale of anything that could possibly happen. And I think Laura's more unhinged than Jimmy is. So.
I mean, look, I think that there are some areas, and it takes a lot to say this, but I think there are some areas in which Jimmy would actually be good in advising the president on, foreign policy or who to keep and who to get rid of on foreign policy, especially pertaining to Middle East policy.
Yeah, no, I'm just, yeah. Look, we might agree on Israel or some other things, no problem, right? I'm just giving that as like, I know that on the left, people would find that to be the most outrageous thing they'd ever heard. And this is more outrageous than that, right? So that can't be the story. There's now all sorts of cover stories out there that make no sense at all. One day we're gonna find out. But the last thing I'll say about this is, meanwhile, mainstream media is like, oh, let's see, a blogger of course has this much power. I don't question that at all, okay? And then people on both sides are getting fired, but it must be just an internal. Guys, come on, this is like Israel versus America.
Let's do a little digging. Let's do a little investigating, right? Let's ask some tough questions and figure out what's actually going on.
Yeah, and the reason we say about Dana Bash is, so look, she's got an interesting career full of different things, but lately, I think she's gotten entrenched into more of a pro-Israel position, partly because people went to her house, and I think she got mad about that and dug herself in further, etc. But like when people like her, and it's not just about her, it's just in mainstream media, when they say serious people, right? They mean like the professionals who believe that the status quo is awesome and the establishment is the greatest thing ever and war is fantastic and Israel should always be listened to. Israel is in that list of things we always do, right?
The sacred
and so the people who have ruined this country with the things we always do are the serious people, right? So that's as far as their analysis goes. Let's be honest. Come on, guys. CNN, New York Times, are you gonna do a real piece? Okay, this is Israel first versus America first. Everyone on the right wing knows it. Tons of people on the left wing knows it. The only people who don't seem to know it is national media reporters covering the White House and Congress. And I think, come on, that's embarrassing.
And to be honest with you, I think it's the most interesting development within the Republican Party ever. I mean that, ever. Because ever since I've been alive, the only Republican Party I've known is the hawkish pro-war party, the neoconservative party.
Yeah.
And so we'll see what happens. And now all of a sudden you see this absorption of neoconservatives within the Democratic Party. And it's just it should be worrying to Democratic voters, but unfortunately they're a little asleep at the wheel on that issue.
I can't help but say one last thing. It's amazing what the national media misses. So I remember a million years ago, George W. Bush comes out with a policy, foreign policy, while he's running for president, that is diametrically opposed to his dad's, George H.W. Bush. George H.W. Bush, do not attack a country that did not attack you, okay? Do not attack sovereign countries. That was the New World Order. George W. Bush has the exact opposite policy.
Right.
And they're both Republican presidents that follow one another. And the press is like, I don't see it. How did you not see that their policies are diametrically opposed? And so right now, I'm not on America First side. I'm not on Israel, certainly not on Israel First side. But I'm deeply curious as to what's going on inside the White House. And the fact that there's pushback against Israel First is kind of unprecedented.
Yeah.
And so, and by the way, those neocons that are moving to the Democratic Party, has anyone in mainstream media even noted it? Oh, the guys who started the Iraq war, the ones that the Democrats said they were dead set against, half of them, 3/4 of them are now housed inside the Democratic Party.
Right.
And you guys didn't even notice that? It's just embarrassing. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.